Excellent. Thank you.
Mhm.
Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome to our webinar called How Much is Too Much? Parenting in the Age of Overindulgence. My name is Kelly Kunkel, and I'm an extension educator in health and nutrition with the University of Minnesota Extension. And here with me is Sharon Powell, and she is an extension educator with the University of Minnesota in family resiliency. And just so that you know, we will be recording this webinar. And we would love to see your faces if you are not completely zoomed out for the day, which is something that's easy to do. Please turn on your camera, but if you don't feel like it, that's fine too. But we do ask that you mute yourself as we go through the half hour today. Put any questions that you might have into the chat, and we will be sure to monitor that chat. And Sharon is going to share her screen now.
Yeah.
We were talking earlier about our traveling experiences during COVID-19 and the lack of traveling experiences. And so I'm going to have you go to the next slide, Sharon. This is what called the road trip for the day. So this is your time opportunity to have a road trip for the day. We're going to talk today about overindulgence and learn about overindulgence and the 3 ways to overindulge. We're going to talk about the test of 4. And then we're going to share with you the overindulgence online courses. And we have 3 different online courses that are free of charge that we will be sharing with you. And then following this webinar, we will follow up with all of the links to the courses so that you have those. Next slide, Sharon. So what is overindulgence? And overindulgence and overindulging children is giving them too much, too soon, and too long. And it gives them things or experiences that they're not quite ready for. It's not appropriate at their age or their interests or their talents. And it's the process of giving things to children to meet adult needs, not the child's needs. The child has specific needs, but this is really meeting the adult's needs. It's giving a disproportionate amount of family resources to 1 or more children in the family. And the resource can be money. That's oftentimes what we think about, but it can also be time and energy. So there are different ways to give additional resources to that 1 or more children. Now, this is really a difficult thing for people, both parents and grandparents and adult caregivers to hear. But overindulgence is really a form of child neglect. And so it's as hard as that is to hear, that's why you're here today, to learn more about overindulgence, because we don't want to neglect our children. Because really what overindulgence does, it hinders a child's developmental tasks or life lessons. They're not prepared for life as a result of overindulgence as a child. And so Sharon's going to tell us more about the 3 types of overindulgence.
Thank you, Kelly. And I think it's also important to remember to just emphasize that even though it is a form of child neglect, let's say, it also comes from a good heart. And that's what one of the, developer of this whole concept and this whole theory calls this. She calls it good heart parenting. And so it's done usually from a place of love. And if you are a parent, or you certainly have been parented in one way or another, you know how much most parents care for their children's happiness and well-being. So a lot of times it can be a good intention, but maybe not end up in a place that is healthy for the child. So Kelly mentioned there were 3 types of overindulgence, and I'm just going to delve a little bit more deep into those 3 types. The first one is too much, basically. And what that means, what Jean meant when she talked about that, was basically parents not understanding the concept of enough. It was kind of the idea that, oh, if a little of a good thing is good, then a lot of a good thing must be better. And that's just not necessarily the case, as you all know sometimes. The second type is called over-nurturing. And over-nurturing is when parents do too much for their children. They overdo, they spoil, They give too much attention, doing things for children that they should be learning to do for themselves. And so the thing about that is it's very tempting to do, in part because sometimes if you let a child do something for themselves, it takes a lot longer, or it's hard to watch them struggle. You know, it requires a level of discipline on the part of the parent. And sometimes they just don't have the wherewithal or haven't noticed that that's something they should be doing. And so that's why over nurturing can be problematic. And then, of course, if you're doing things always for your children, they never learn to do it for themselves. And I believe the whole really overarching goal of parenting is to help your child adapt to life so that they can be a confident and independent adult someday. Okay, and then the third kind is soft structure. So that's a kind of situation in a family where parents don't have rules, or they don't have consistent rules or consistent boundaries. Or if children wind up doing something that leads to negative consequences, that parents try to basically soften the blow so that the child doesn't have to deal with the consequences. Those are all examples of soft structure. Okie doke, so I go to the next slide. And this is something called the test of 4. And the test of 4 is another tool that Jean Ilsley Clark developed to help parents get a little bit of distance from situations so that they can make a decision about, does this kind of count as overindulgence or not? It's a little bit hard to know in the moment. You know how it is when you are a member of a family, life just sort of moves at a pretty quick pace. You go from decision to decision to decision. And it's hard to sometimes get a little bit of perspective on the decisions that you're making as a parent. So this test of 4 is something we will send you in follow-up. It's a little tool, and I believe there's a way it's created that it's on like a little postcard size piece of paper, and then you can just keep it on your fridge or in your back pocket, wherever it might be useful for you. But the test of 4 is basically 4 questions you ask yourself about a particular situation. So the first question is, does it get in the way of the child learning a developmental task? And if so, which ones? So is whatever decision you're making actually hindering a child from learning a developmental task? The second question is, does it use a disproportionate amount of family resources? So it's really important to remember that children are important members of families, but they are one member of a larger group, that all members of the family deserve the same considerations. And so is this, whatever decision you're making, putting too many resources or too many resources toward one member of the family? The third question you can ask yourself is this more for the parent than the child? So really consider, is this something that, who's benefiting from this decision that you're making, really? And then the fourth question is, does it harm others? So is the decision you're making harmful for folks, both within your family or outside? Okay, so we thought we could kind of walk through an example of this, and we have this precious little boy, this picture of him with his delicious strawberry. But this is just a little brief example of what might happen in a family. So my 6-year-old child won't eat the same foods as the rest of the family. So if we go back up to this set of questions, we can consider this. And if you maybe would just, if you have things to respond to, you can either unmute yourself or type in the chat your answers. So if there's a little member of the family, 6-year-old member of the family, who is not enjoying any of the foods that are being prepared for them that the other family members are eating, let's ask. And so I guess the choice would be, if you decide to not make the child eat the food, let's say, does this get in the way of the child learning a developmental task? And if so, which one? So if this child got to eat their own special foods without ever having to try what the rest of the family was eating, do you think that would get in the way of the child learning a developmental task? And if so, which one? You can, like I said, either unmute or chat your answer in there. And would you mind, Kelly, monitoring the chat and letting us know what people say? Uh-oh. I'm going to stop sharing. I can't, it's all quiet. I hope I haven't lost all of you. Oh, Kelly, you're muted.
Yep, we're
Okay.
it is impacting healthy eating habits, and the child needs to learn to adapt It uses family resources. Families can't cook second meals. So in other words, not to be a short order cook for your child.
Right. Yeah, really good. The very wise people on this call today or on the Zoom. Okay. And then how about the question, is this more for the parent than the child? Let's say the child does not have to eat the food still. Was that more a decision that benefits the parent or the child, do you think? Kind of no right answers to all of these. They're more thought questions. But
More for the parent.
yeah. In what way do you think, everybody?
Parents, so it doesn't lead to a tantrum.
Yeah, less hassle. It's just
Right.
easier to kind of get through your day. And just to be clear, as a parent educator, I believe there are definitely times where you just need to get through your day. You don't always have to just slog through this stuff. There are times that you can choose to take the easier route. We all have energy levels that vary, and we have a lot of different things going on in our lives. But if you see a consistent pattern of always taking the easy way out, that's probably something to consider changing in your own life or the lives of the families with whom you work.
Because they don't want to listen to the child cry.
That's right. It does not sound good. And whiners that can kill your eardrums eventually. And yes. Okay, how about this last question? Does it harm others?
Just one more comment about the earlier one, because they
Yeah.
love the child and they want to make the child happy.
Exactly. Remember, this is good heart parenting. You don't want your child to be agonizing. And I think actually Kelly and I were just talking before folks joined us about another family that she had talked with in a Zoom webinar that there was a child who had just a very keen sense of smell. And, you know, that probably made things really different for that child than it would for other people. So maybe some of it, I mean, I have heard some things about being a little more respectful of picky eaters, that they genuinely do have a yucky experience, some of them. So,
right. And we can teach our children to understand their own body needs and read their cues and be respectful and teach manners about saying no in a respectful way.
Exactly. That's right. Okay. So the question about harming others, I would say, I guess my first response would be not really. This probably doesn't harm others. Certainly not causing physical harm, but it might do a little bit of emotional harm in terms of developing resentment among other family members, or just feeling like, why does this person always get special treatment, or things like that. Does anyone else want to share anything about that?
Right, it's really harming the child more developmentally, but when it spills over to maybe social events, the child avoids going to birthday parties or special celebrations because there's going to be food there. That might harm others and make others feel bad about them not being present.
That's a really great point. It might harm the child too, in terms of just, again, socially, like nobody wants to invite them over because they're not that fun to spend time with, possibly. Okay, so good job, everyone. That's basically the test of 4. And as I mentioned, I think I love this little set of questions because it's just a very simple way to kind of run through a checklist for myself about, and I'm a parent too, and I struggle with issues of overindulgence regularly because I love my children and I love to see them happy. And so, you know, one thing about overindulgence is that it causes happiness kind of in the short term, but not necessarily in the long run. So it's something you have to sort of have self-talk with as a parent a lot of times. Okay. The impact of overindulgence. Oh, I kind of jumped the gun. I'm about to talk about this. So basically, sorry, let me get to my next set of notes here. Oh yeah, as I was just saying, children, if you ask them, probably would say, I love overindulgence. It's the greatest. I get everything I want exactly when I want it. And, you know, certainly that is the case, that it is fun if you get what you want when you want it, or you don't have to do the hard things, or we all know that as a child or as an adult, even it's not fun to do those things, but you have to do them. That's life. And so again, part of our job as parents is to create safe spaces where our children can practice those skills that they need to be successful and happy people in their lives. And so if you always are kind of rescuing them from the hard stuff, they never get the practice and they never learn how to really develop and achieve that mastery that you're looking for. So here's some of the impacts of overindulgence. It's painful to the child and the people around them. I don't know about you, but I know some children who I would consider to be spoiled, I guess, and I don't enjoy being around them. It's not pleasant. Children can become demanding and unappreciative. They lack everyday life skills. I was just talking about that. And they often have an overblown sense of entitlement. Like, shouldn't you be doing all these things for me? You know, they think their parents do it, so they assume everybody else in the world is going to do it too. And they learn pretty quickly that's actually not the case. So here's some ways that overindulgence reappears in adult life. So if you're a child who is overindulged throughout your life, then when you're an adult, it can show up in these different ways. And Jean Ilsley Clark calls them risky gifts. And she has this whole long list of them that we're not going to share today, but you can find, I'm sure, on our website. But I really think they're a great evidence of why you don't want to overindulge all the time with your children. So here's just some statements maybe that you might hear from adults who were overindulged when they were children. I feel sad and angry when I don't get my way or don't get what I want. I often feel disappointed in others, let down by them. The more I give, the more I expect. I am so far in debt, I can't see the light of day. And I'm overweight, discontent, I overdo, and I still feel empty. And I think Jean actually did interviews with people who identified themselves as having been overindulged as children, and she interviewed them as adults. And I think some of these statements come directly from those interviews. Let's see. So some of the hazards of overindulgence include, for adults, trouble learning how to delay gratification, trouble giving up status as the constant center of attention, trouble becoming competent in everyday skills, self-care and relating to others, trouble taking personal responsibility, trouble developing a sense of personal identity, trouble knowing what is enough, and trouble knowing what is normal for other people. So I'm just wondering if those of you who are on the call today could think for a minute, do you know any adults that you think might fit into this category that you think, oh yeah, I wonder if they were overindulged? You can just, I guess, chat it, I guess, if you know of an example, or if you do, if you might want to share how it feels to have to interact with them as an adult. I think about like coworkers. That would be the worst, to have a coworker.
Always shares that they have an adult students whose parents contact me about a problem in their college class.
Oh, yes.
That's kind of a helicopter parent right there. And absolutely, they can identify an adult that clearly was overindulged.
Yeah, it's really kind of unpleasant. All right, well, thank you.
If I can, I'm gonna share. So I was actually the kid that mom made the separate food for her.
Okay.
So I was a super, super, super picky kid. And my mom never pushed it. She just made separate food for me and all of that. And so now I'm a picky eater and I get made fun of a lot. And it's really hard for me to go eat with people because my picky eating has been perpetuated throughout my whole life. And now that I have my own kids, things are different. I've slowly gotten out of it. But my mom definitely overindulged me, made my own food, didn't try to break that at all. And it came from a place of love, but it definitely made it more difficult as an adult to go to social functions and things like that and not know if I'm going to be able to eat anything.
Oh,
Yeah,
Chelsea, thank you so much for sharing that information. Really, really helpful. And
Yes.
You're great. It came from a good heart, and that's really what it was about. We did a feeding children series, and really stressed the importance of the division of responsibility by Ellen Satter in feeding practices for children, because it's the parent that decides what the child eats, where they eat, and when they eat. But it's the child's responsibility to eat and how much they should eat. And so there's a lot of information, great information about that. Somebody says, I love the division of responsibility. but it's not easy. So maybe I will have you, Sharon, go to the next slide for me, please.
Okay.
Because why do parents overindulge? And as we said, it comes from a good heart. We often hear that is because of affluence or because the parent growing up didn't have enough. Certainly these can be part of the reasons. But overindulgence can happen at any income level. And I think that's really important to stress. People that are lower income can still overindulge. Maybe it's that soft structure where they don't have bedtime rules, or they decide that their children don't need to follow any chores in the home, or whatever it might be. There are different ways that parents can overindulge. And I think it's important to note as well that grandparents can overindulge. Step parents can overindulge. There's a lot of different ways to overindulge. Next slide. So it comes from a good heart. Overindulgence comes from a good heart. Parents give or give in or give too much because they want their children to be happy. They want to get through the day. And I have to tell you, COVID right now is really stressing parents and how they parent, and maybe overindulgence is happening more now than before. And we've got some really great COVID-19 parenting resources available. But often it's a situation where parents just take the path of least resistance. And there's no blame or shame in that. It's important to know that it's happening and then to get better, to work at it harder, right? So overindulgence is all around us. We see it in social media. It almost makes us feel as parents or caregivers that we have a bar that we have to make as a parent. We have to give more and more and more. It's all around us. And it really is the new normal. And so next slide. We have some great resources with the University of Minnesota Extension, and we're so fortunate to have worked with Jean Ilsley Clark, who's a researcher and author on this overindulgence work, and as well as with a team of cross-center cross-disciplinary individuals from the Center for Family Development at the University of Minnesota Extension, and have developed 3 courses. The one is on parenting in the age of overindulgence. And I'm going to have to go back just real quick one more time. Parenting in the age of overindulgence, we're really looking at some specific examples of what it looks like. Learning about the test of 4, but learning about what are some examples. So we have one child that's a picky eater, one child that's a picky spender, and one child is a picky dresser, and how we can maybe identify overindulgence in those. And the picky eater, his name is Charlie. And Charlie loves peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. That's all he wants. And that's the example that Sharon provided as well. And what kind of situation does that lead for the entire family? And is that overindulgence? And it's good examples. The next one, Sharon, is next slide, please, is on Parenting with a Good Heart online course. And in this course, you learn about parenting in the age of overindulgence and families' concerns about overindulgence, but it's also an excellent resource for teachers and childcare providers and caregivers and other family members that interact with children, and professionals that work with parents. All can benefit from taking this online class. And the next slide. And then there's the Developmental Parenting Highway, and that's an online course as well. And here it really compares parenting to driving down a highway. And there are 4 lanes that you can take as a parent down that highway, but sometimes we end up on the shoulder or in the ditches. And how do we get back onto those 4 lanes as a parent and on that highway? And so again, some great information about overindulgence. And I'm going to show you the next slide. And these are all some resources. The Good Heart Parenting book covers a great deal of what we just talked about. It's a 44-page book that you can print off and read on Good Heart Parenting. The resources on the test of 4 and that handout that you can have on your refrigerator, that little card that you can put on your refrigerator or in your purse to just do a test to see if it's overindulgence. And then developmental affirmations. We all need affirmations, and they're very specific to an age or stage in our life. And they're also included, we send text messages to childcare providers and parents. We have a program called You Got This for parents and caregivers, and we have one for Start Strong on childcare providers, and they get developmental affirmations, both for their children because they need them, but also for parents because we all need them as adults. And so please take a look at those, and if you're interested in signing up for text messages, please let us know, and we'd be happy to do so. And all of these resources are free and available to you with the University of Minnesota Extension. And so with the minutes that we have remaining, I'm going to go ahead and go to the next slide. If you could please just put in the chat, what is one thing that you learned today? One thing that you learned today, and one action that you will take as a result of today's webinar. One action that you'll take as today's webinar. Now, we did this quickly. This is a half-an-hour infomercial on all of the courses that we have on overindulgence, and you can go and get all of the information on our website. As again, we will follow up with those links for you. And I love watching I appreciate the resources. Need to teach my son to do more asking the 4 questions. Yeah, great, test of 4. Love to see that. All right, next slide. Now you will be getting a certificate of participation once you completed our evaluation. And so Sharon's going to put into the chat the link to the evaluation. And so please be sure to complete that evaluation. We love to hear how we're doing. So it's very important to us, and it's important for future planning for other webinars. And as she's doing that, I'm going to just read some more. I love to learn about how to deal with parents who are overindulging, the resources, and contacting Head Start director to schedule parenting classes. And yes, there's some great videos in there that they can just play from there, from the website, so they can use those directly for their classes. And Sharon, if you could go back to the webinar or the PowerPoint, there are several upcoming webinars. We have more in the financial parenting series that are coming up, and Sharon will be in several of those, I think. And the Feeding Your Child series, I've got the one on 18-year-olds, and I'd love to have you there. There's some webinars featured in Spanish, and then some other webinars as well, all through the Center of Family Development. And our next slide shows that there are several ways that you can engage with us, with the University of Minnesota Extension and the Center for Family Development. And you can do any and all of them, and we would appreciate it. And the next slide is Sharon and I's contact information. Please don't hesitate to let us know if you have any questions or comments or concerns. Will these slides be accessible to us? Yes, I believe they can be. So if not the slides, definitely the resource list and the information.
Yeah, and we will be sending a follow-up email in the next couple of days that will have the resources that we mentioned in this. And so, yeah, and if you would like these slides, please contact me, and I'm happy to send you a copy of them.
And we also have the recording, and it takes a few days because we'll be putting it into the closed caption information and get that taken care of. But so that takes a few days to do, but we'll send that recording to you as well. So now,
just to say, I put a link to the evaluation. So if you click on that link, it'll just take you right in there, and you can just fill it out quickly right now, or we'll probably be asking you about it later too. It's not very long.
So if you would like to ask any questions of us right now, please put it in the chat or unmute yourself.
Yeah. And thank you so much for joining us today. It was wonderful to be with you all. And I know we said this is from 12 to 12:30, so no worries if you have to zip along, but we'll be on here a little bit if you'd like to still stick around for a while.
Oh, I see that, that couldn't see the link, and that's because as people start adding things in, it just keeps moving up. So we'll just add that link periodically.
Yeah, let me put it in again here. I think I still have
I
it.
just did.
Oh, now you got it.
Doubled.
Oh, we've learned a lot about from presenting over Zoom, that's for sure.
That is for sure. Oh, you're welcome. So great to have everybody on today. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, and have a good rest of your day. It's fun to have folks from all across the state too.
It really is. The one feature I wish we had differently for chat is that, if you enter after people have responded, you don't see the earlier chats.
I know that's a drag because
I
there's
know.
in there. I think I'm going to stop recording. We can probably stop recording.
Yeah, absolutely.